The age of the character has been changed, pure cool text, reborn into the world of the Red Chamber and turned into a zombie. After crawling out of the tomb and hearing about the outbreak of war in the Northern Realm, I thought to myself, isn't the battlefield the easiest place for zombies to obtain blood? Lin Hao, who had made a decision, immediately went to the northern border to join the army, preparing to evolve himself with the blood of countless soldiers on the battlefield. But Lin Hao, who only came to dine on the battlefield in the northern region, unconsciously became the god of war in the northern region with his strong strength. By utilizing the bloodline of the zombie king, soldiers, warhorses, birds, and more can be transformed into zombies. When a zombie army appears on the battlefield, it will be terrifying. In this natural situation, Lin Hao accomplished a great feat that ordinary people could not achieve. But unexpectedly, on the day when the class teacher returned to court, he met Lin Mimi at a palace banquet and was shocked by her younger brother's words. Keywords of the novel. Red Chamber. Reborn zombie, I joined the army for cultivation without pop-ups, Red Chamber. Reborn zombie, I joined the army for cultivation complete collection download TXT, Red Chamber. Reborn zombie, I joined the army for cultivation latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Climbing out of the tomb and going north to join the army for cultivation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Climbing out of the tomb and going north to join the army for cultivation. There is a cemetery outside the city of Gusu, with a high and dark night wind accompanied by gusts of Yin wind. No one dares to come here at night. Wow! And at this moment, on the soil slope of a cemetery, one hand instantly broke through the soil, and a figure slowly crawled out of it. This figure has crimson eyes, sharp fangs, and slender nails. It doesn't look like a person no matter what. Finally crawled out. The figure muttered to herself, then looked around at the environment and the slender and sharp nails on her hands. She quickly turned around and covered the cemetery with soil. After all, if someone discovers something breaking out here, it may cause some trouble. After finishing everything, the figure looked around and then found a dense forest and rushed away. He was as fast as lightning, but in the blink of an eye, he rushed into the dense forest. I'm so hungry, really hungry. In the dense forest, Lin Hao kept salivating from his mouth, clearly starving to the extreme. At this moment, Lin Hao saw a rabbit running in the distance. Without hesitation, Lin Hao rushed over and grabbed the rabbit, then took a bite and started drinking blood. At this point, Lin Hao had turned into a zombie. He came from modern times and accidentally traveled to this world. When he woke up, he found himself in the tomb. At that time, Lin Hao only had his soul left, so he was locked inside the corpse and unable to move. It is also unclear why his soul gradually merged with the corpse. Due to being a zombie, a special change occurred after the fusion of souls, and he became a zombie from then on. He couldn't sense the passage of time inside the coffin, and he didn't know how long it had been. The fusion between the body and the soul became increasingly intense. It's strange that even after the corpse turned into a zombie, it could still grow. After all, when he first arrived, the body was clearly a child. Now that the transformation has been completely completed, Lin Hao has also successfully crawled out of the cemetery. Although I don't know why I became a zombie, being able to revive myself is the greatest blessing in itself. However, zombies are bad. At least they can't get rid of the restrictions of blood. Even absorbing the essence of the sun and the moon can only maintain their basic actions. If they want to continue to become stronger, they can only drink blood, and the best is human. Although Lin Hao has become a zombie, he is still a child raised under the red flag, and he does not want to indiscriminately kill innocent people. Alas, it seems that in the future, we can only find opportunities to kill some villains and then obtain blood for cultivation. Lin Hao sighed and said, if it were a zombie with no moral bottom line, it would probably have been a killing spree by now, wouldn't it? Suddenly, Lin Hao stopped moving and grabbed the rabbit's body to hide in a towering tree, because his keen perception told him that someone had arrived. Sure enough, soon the two hunters came together to explore, and it was obvious that they were hunting in the mountains. Did you hear that? The northern Tartars are going south again, and now they are recruiting troops and horses from all over the country. What does this have to do with us? No matter how we fight, we won't be able to reach the south. The two hunters spoke as they walked away, while Lin Hao looked at their backs thoughtfully. Although I don't know what dynasty it is currently, after all, Lin Hao doesn't have much knowledge of history, but it is certain that war will lead to death. In an instant, Lin Hao's eyes lit up. He was a zombie. What he needs the most is blood. Just now, he thought he would often go to the mass grave to pick up the bodies of death row inmates, or slaughter mountain bandits to absorb blood for cultivation. Isn't there a better opportunity now? Go straight to the battlefield. Join the army. The battlefield is like a meat grinder, and it is unknown how many people die on the battlefield at any moment. As zombies in such an environment, isn't it like a fish in water? And they are all people who died in battle. When Lin Hao draws blood, he doesn't have any psychological burden. This is simply an evolutionary path that leads to heaven. After making a decision, Lin Hao immediately took action and prepared to travel north along the barren mountains and wilderness. When on the road, you can hunt wild beasts or take action to punish bandits and villains. I believe that by the time you reach the north, you should be able to control your appearance. Traveling northward, Lin Hao hunted and killed various wild animals along the way to draw blood. When encountering bandits causing chaos, he would also secretly take action. As expected, human blood is several times better. So in just over a month, he has undergone earth-shattering changes. From the beginning, with crimson eyes and sharp teeth and claws, it can now maintain a normal human appearance. Except for his slightly pale skin, there is nothing different from ordinary people, and he is not afraid of sunlight, glutinous rice, and so on. Currently, Lin Hao has not found his weakness. At the same time, along the way, Lin Hao also considered the issue of identity. Fortunately, the world is not peaceful, and there are refugees everywhere. So joining the military should not be a problem, and even if someone investigates in the future, it will still be a matter of the future. Anyway, he is a zombie and has not discovered any Taoist or immortal methods in this world, so he is not afraid at all. Finally arrived. Lin Hao, dressed in cloth, looked at Jinbei's city in front of him with a smile on his face. After a month of trekking through mountains and rivers, he finally arrived at the northern border. Following the crowd, I found the recruitment office and thought it needed some testing, such as lifting a stone lock. What Lin Hao didn't expect was that the officers at the recruitment office only asked for a name, age, ancestral origin, and so on, and they were able to handle it directly. However, it can be seen from this that the Tartars posed a great threat to the Zhou dynasty. Recruiting soldiers was actually just finding some cannon fodder. These cannon fodder would be used to defend the city, which would be the best use for the court. On the way to the military camp with the officer, Lin Hao was also pondering, as he secretly explored many things about this world. He found that this world was not any dynasty he was familiar with in history, and what was even more strange was that the language and writing of this world were actually connected with modern times. This is obviously not in line with common sense. After all, ancient Mandarin was a variety of dialects. So Lin Hao concluded that he had come to a fictional world. While Lin Hao was lost in thought, the officer led them to the new recruits' camp, and then the officer said to the crowd. The new general of the new barracks will undergo a month of training, and then be sent to each battalion. After a pause, the host continued. You must perform well. A big battle is about to begin, and those who are well trained and strong in the new barracks can be promoted to 100 generals. Listening to the officer's words, everyone was amazed. After all, it's not like there's no food to eat. Who would join the army? Since I have already joined the military, I want to climb higher. After all, official positions represent salary. Lin Hao's ultimate goal is to settle down in the military camp and then take the opportunity to obtain enough blood evolution on the battlefield. So when the new battalion commander said these words, Lin Hao always watched coldly. After all, he is not a hero, and because this is a fictional world, he has no sense of belonging at the moment, so naturally he will not be passionate about defending his country. At most, in order to facilitate their own hunting of blood, they may plan some military power and so on. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Entering the military camp and going out to hunt at midnight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Entering the military camp and going out to hunt at midnight. As the officers began to distribute the barracks, Lin Hao's barracks were the 16th in the east. When Lin Hao arrived at the camp, he found that there were already 12 men inside. When everyone saw Lin Hao, they were all amazed. After all, Lin Hao's appearance and temperament were clearly from a big family. There's no way, in modern society, being pampered and pampered, turning into a zombie in this world is like a white jade, so no matter how you look at it, it doesn't seem like an ordinary person. My name is Lu Zhuang, how do you call me brother? A strong man who was 8 feet tall came to Lin Hao and asked with a loud laugh. It seems like a farmer, but he is very enthusiastic. Another man approached and grabbed Lin Hao's shoulder, saying, My name is Lu Wu, from the same village as Brother Zhuang. Other people also introduced themselves one after another, and Lin Hao, who came into this world and hardly interacted with anyone, said with a stiff smile. My name is Lin Hao, from Gusu, Jiangnan. After getting to know each other, everyone gathered together to chat, but the reasons for joining the military were generally the same. Either I was pulled into a strong position, or because my family couldn't afford to eat, I decided to take a gamble. After all, the court is currently short of soldiers. As long as you agree to join the army, you can receive a settlement fee, which is not much but enough to feed your family for a year. So in this era, human life is really not worth money, and one life can be exchanged for a year's worth of food. After successfully joining the army, Lin Hao's plan was finally completed as the first step. Lin Hao, who was lying in the tent that night, couldn't sleep because he was hungry again. Looking at the sleeping comrades around him, Lin Hao swallowed his saliva and then shook his head. It seems that zombies' instincts are still terrifying, and more evolution is needed to avoid being driven by zombies' instincts. In order to avoid losing control and killing the entire new recruits camp, Lin Hao did not hesitate to sneak out of the military camp. After all, this is just a new recruit camp, and with the powerful abilities of Lin Hao's zombies, it is still easy to leave quietly. Lin Hao headed straight to the wilderness outside Jinbei City. Although the frontal war had not yet broken out, minor conflicts between the two sides continued. Therefore, the Tartars have always arranged scout teams to explore various parts of the northern region day and night, and Lin Hao's goal is to have these scout teams of the Tartars. On the way to join the army in the northern region, he also learned a lot about the world. He knew that these Tartars were extremely cruel, and even their greatest hobby was cooking Central Plains women and children. When killing them, Lin Hao would not be lenient just because of this. With the scent and perception of zombies toward strangers, Lin Hao easily found a scout team of Tartars in the northern wilderness. There are 12 people, all of whom are elite. Lin Hao was hiding in the dense forest, his crimson eyes fixed on the distant Tartar scout squad. At this moment, he had already revealed the zombie body, and the thirst for blood made Lin Hao's mouth continuously drip with saliva. Finally, as the Tartar scout squad approached, Lin Hao took action. Standing on the top of the tree, Lin Hao's legs bent and he shot out like a spring, but in the blink of an eye, he arrived at the head of a Tartar cavalry. What is it? The Tartar cavalry exclaimed in surprise, but before they could react, they were caught by Lin Hao. Roar! Like the roar of a wild beast, Lin Hao bit into the neck of the Tartar cavalry, and the scorching blood immediately entered his throat, making Lin Hao's eyes squint with ease. At the same time, it is visible to the naked eye that one's body is becoming stronger, which is the terrifying talent of zombies. As long as one continuously sucks and refines, they can quickly become stronger. Monster, monster. Monster. The other soldiers of the Tartars were so frightened that their liver and gallbladder were splitting. They were killing people like crazy, but when they saw terrifying creatures like zombies, they were still quite frightened. Without any hesitation, these Tartar soldiers fled straight towards the rear, their whips waving non-stop and their eyes filled with fear. It's already too late, even if they ride warhorses, they can't escape, after all, Lin Hao is a zombie. Wow! Lin Hao suddenly threw the Tartar soldiers in his hand away, while roaring up to the sky. Roar! Drops of blood dripped from their sharp fangs, and then their eyes turned crimson as they looked towards the other Tartar soldiers fleeing in the distance. Boom! Almost without seeing how Lin Hao moved, his figure came behind the Tartar soldiers, even on horseback they could not escape. It was just a few breaths, and the remaining 11 Tartar cavalry were all killed, while Lin Hao was drinking blood one by one. Every time he drank the blood of a Tartar soldier, Lin Hao could clearly feel that he was becoming stronger. Indeed, human blood is the most powerful, comparable to the blood of 10 tigers I devoured. Lin Hao threw away the last Tartar soldier and exclaimed. Finally, he has solved his hunger, and for at least the next 10 days, Lin Hao will not be influenced by his bloodthirsty instincts. Just as he was preparing to tidy up the battlefield, Lin Hao suddenly froze and looked at the trembling warhorse next to him who dared not escape. Lin Hao wanted to try something. He wants to try whether he can turn creatures into zombies. Human beings have been unable to find opportunities, why not give this warhorse a try? With this idea in mind, Lin Hao approached a warhorse and then forced a drop of blood from his fingertips to feed it to the warhorse in front of him. Later, an unexpected scene occurred for Lin Hao, where the warhorses let out a roar and then a faint red light flickered on their fur. The muscles and bones all over the body began to wriggle incessantly, and in the end, their body size surprisingly grew a bit larger, and their entire posture became unusually fierce. At first glance, they thought they were the kind of horse king that roamed the mountains and fields. Surprisingly succeeded. Lin Hao was a bit stunned. He not only turned this warhorse into a zombie horse, but also had the ability to control its will. Simply put, his command is that the zombie horse cannot resist, and a single thought can ignite the blood inside the zombie horse's body, causing it to explode. If it is useful for both warhorses, it means it is also useful for humans. However, Lin Hao noticed that his method needs to be used against people who have no resistance. Of course, if a person dies and is transformed into a zombie, there will naturally be no resistance. But Lin Hao still doesn't want to abuse this ability. After all, zombies ultimately grow and survive by consuming blood. If he creates too much, he doesn't want to create an ancient version of the Resident Evil. Zombie horses are different from human zombies like themselves. They don't need to drink human blood, they just become pure carnivores. Lin Hao estimates that it is the difference in the essence of life. Humans belong to highly intelligent creatures, and the zombies they turn into also have high requirements for the quality of fresh blood. As for zombie horses, they only belong to ordinary animals, and naturally consuming the meat of ordinary animals can meet their needs. Lin Hao used the same method to turn the other 11 warhorses into zombie horses, and then nodded in satisfaction. In the future, zombie horses can search for the Tartar scout team for themselves in the wild. Through the telepathy between zombies, they can always know the location of the Tartar team, and when they come out to hunt at night, they will also be faster. However, Lin Hao also discovered a limitation, which is that the number of zombies he can convert is limited. It seems that he cannot extract too much essence and blood, otherwise it will affect his own strength and foundation. At present, Lin Hao's limit should be around 20 to 30, and whether the essence and blood needed by humans are equivalent to those of zombie horses can only be tried in the future. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Demonstrating Powerful Force and Becoming 100 Generals. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Demonstrating powerful force and becoming 100 generals inside the military camp, Lin Hao quietly returned to the camp, and no one noticed his departure. Even if discovered, all you need to say is go out and use the restroom. The military training began the next day, and the ancient food was indeed very poor. However, Lin Hao found that for most soldiers, this was already an excellent meal. After all, in this chaotic era, tree bark, guanine soil and so on are too common as food, and there is a congee rice in this military camp. After finishing his meal, Lin Hao started training. After a glance, he shook his head helplessly, realizing that the training in the Zhou army was just average. Surprisingly, he was just holding a wooden stick there practicing moves, physical training, practical training, and so on. However, upon careful consideration, one can also understand that the Zhou is obviously very poor, and this group of carnivorous animals cannot provide them, so naturally they cannot undergo too difficult training. After a morning of training, the main general of the new barracks walked up to the command platform and then spoke loudly. Strength is the top priority in the military, and in the future, you will be distributed to various departments in units of 100 soldiers team. This is also an opportunity for you to wait. Defeat 10 opponents on the arena to become a 100-man general in a 100-man team. The words of the main general caused an uproar in the audience, and Lin Hao also raised his eyebrows and pondered. He doesn't want to be arrogant, after all, his ultimate goal is just to gain blood and become stronger. There is a problem, where there are people, there are rivers and lakes. If you have always been a big soldier, it will be inconvenient for you to do anything. So Lin Hao decided to compete. After all, with the position of a military general, he had the opportunity to lead troops to battle, which naturally made it easier to obtain blood. The highest official position announced by the main general is that of a 100-person general. Simply put, as long as one wins on the arena, they can obtain the official position of a 100-person general. Everyone's eyes turned red, and he was already considered a formal official with a rank of 9 in the Great Zhou 100 Generals. If you are still alive after the war ends, you may even have the opportunity to serve in local government offices and become a county magistrate. Although county captains in this area usually rank above or below the 9th rank, at least they are also officials. Compared to those non-rank constables, they are much more advanced. Many scholars who have studied for many years, relying on various connections, can only seek a county magistrate with a rank of around 9. So many young men present were excited, not considering whether they could survive in this war, but only considering the present glory and wealth. Seeing this scene, the new recruits nodded in satisfaction. The new recruits were not unaware that they were cannon fodder, so in order to boost morale, this order was issued. Left and right are just 100 generals. If they can really survive, then the court will still make a profit. After all, every veteran who can survive on the battlefield is a rare treasure, and forming a new army in the future will also have a foundation. Damn it, 100 generals. It's comparable to the county magistrate in our hometown. Lu Zhuang blushed and said, but looking at the fiery eyes of the 30,000 new recruits around him, he shook his head helplessly. Although he has some confidence in his physique, at most he only thinks about the village chief or what kind of chief. The competition among these 100 generals is too fierce, and there will inevitably be many talented men and warriors. Lu Wu and others on the side also nodded, but just then Lin Hao walked out. Hey, what are you doing, little mouse? Lu Zhuang and others shouted that because Lin Hao was thin and weak, they all called him a little mouse and took good care of him. For example, when cooking before, the Huo Tujin saw that Lin Hao was thin and weak, and wanted to withhold some food. As a result, Lu Zhuang and a few others immediately surrounded and frightened the fiery army. Therefore, when they saw that Lin Hao was going to the arena, they were all worried. Lin Hao grinned at them, no one could tell that he would be a bloodthirsty zombie. Don't worry, brother Zhuang. Actually, I'm quite strong. Listening to Lin Hao's words, everyone was stunned. How dare they believe such a thin and weak appearance? Anyway, Lin Hao still stood on the arena and bowed to the main general before looking at all the new recruits. New recruit Lin Hao, please advise. Listening to Lin Hao's words, many people suddenly had bright eyes. Such a thin and weak appearance should be easy to bully, right? I'll do it. Sure enough, a strong man jumped out, clearly preparing to treat Lin Hao as a starting point. Looking at the strong man in front of him, his physique was slightly larger than that of Lin Hao, and no one believed that Lin Hao could win due to the visible difference. With the order of the general, the scene that shocked the entire army occurred as the strong man rushed towards Lin Hao. Lin Hao grabbed it with one hand, then twisted the strong man's arm and threw it up, smashing it fiercely on the arena. Boom! With a loud bang, everyone even felt a tremble in the arena, and the strong man's screams followed closely behind. But Lin Hao calmly tidied up his attire and then looked at the main general. "General, have you won the bid?" Listening to Lin Hao's words, the general finally realized and looked at Lin Hao in front of him with surprised eyes. "You don't look like you're only 15 or 16 years old, do you? How could you have such divine power?" The captain was pleasantly surprised. After all, being a formidable general is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Lin Hao nodded. Although he wanted to hide his identity as a zombie, it didn't mean he would be submissive. He wouldn't hesitate at all when it was time to use his power. After all, as a powerful zombie, if you are still obedient and cautious, it is really a bit suffocating. And becoming stronger is for survival, living is for enjoyment, and obtaining some status and status appropriately is also considered good. Lin Hao's powerful strength intimidated everyone, and there were still a few new recruits who refused to accept the challenge on stage, but were all easily defeated by Lin Hao. The general was overjoyed at the moment and then directly ordered Lin Hao to become a 100-strong general, selecting his own troops from the new barracks. Because it was a time of war and the officers under the 100 generals did not even have a rank, Lin Hao was able to appoint his own village chief, deputy chief, and so on. Returning to the camp, Lu Zhuang and others looked at Lin Hao in shock. "Little mouse, I didn't expect you to be born with divine power." They exclaimed, "It's really God who rewards food. If you have this ability, the chances of surviving on the battlefield are very high. As long as you survive, you will definitely be promoted and honored in the future. Honoring your ancestors is just around the corner." Lin Hao smiled slightly. He was now a zombie and had consumed a lot of blood, much stronger than when he first crawled out of the grave. According to Lin Hao's estimation, even a heavy object weighing 10,000 pounds could be easily lifted at this moment, and the presence of a hegemon was far from comparable to it. In addition, the characteristic of zombies is that they are invulnerable to weapons and water, so there is generally no danger for Lin Hao on this battlefield. Finally, Lin Hao appointed Lu Zhuang and Lu Wu as the village chiefs under his command, each leading 50 soldiers. As for the remaining commanders and officers, they are appointed by themselves. Time passes by day, and since Lin Hao became 100 generals, he has become famous in the new recruit camp. During each training session, other top 100 generals came to challenge Lin Hao, but no one could withstand the 3 moves in front of him. Over time, the soldiers of the entire new recruit camp knew that a fierce general had arrived. The military is simple, because of his strong personal strength. Although Lin Hao was only 100 generals, all the soldiers respected him. Finally, after a month of training, they will be incorporated into the official army. And this also represents that the war is about to begin. After all, if not in a hurry, their new recruits need to train for at least a year and a half before they can land on the battlefield. Now it's only a month of training, and I haven't even learned the rules of the battlefield yet. Obviously, these 30,000 new recruits are all cannon fodder, and it's fortunate to have survived a few in the end. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Cavalry Battalion, Dangerous Scout Tasks. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Cavalry Battalion, Dangerous Scout Tasks. Due to Lin Hao's strong personal strength, the 100-person team he is in has the best quality in the entire new recruits camp. After all, the soldiers of the 100 generals are all self-selected, and those who are selected also decide whether to join. Everyone is naturally willing to choose Lin Hao, who has strong strength. After all, having a powerful 100 generals makes it easier to survive on the battlefield. So when the final allocation was made, Lin Hao and others were assigned to the Cavalry Brave Cavalry Battalion. In the era of cold weapons, cavalry was definitely the ceiling of the food chain, and since there were not many cavalry in Dezhou, it became even more precious. When everyone heard about being assigned to the Brave Cavalry Battalion, they all showed joy. After all, cavalry is precious, and their survival rate is obviously higher than the cannon fodder assigned to various infantry battalions. Only Lin Hao didn't think so, just because he had known about the fierce attack of the Tartars during his more than a month in the army. 200,000 iron cavalry. With the current quality of Dezhou's soldiers, if it weren't for 400,000 soldiers and horses, there would be no way to compete with him. How many soldiers and horses are there in the northern region now? The original Zhenbei army, consisting of 100,000 soldiers and horses, along with reinforcements from various regions, has a total of only over 300,000 soldiers and horses. So in this battle, life and death are only on the front line. Of course, 30,000 soldiers and horses from the new army camp are cannon fodder, but on a battlefield of this scale, which of the soldiers is not cannon fodder? Lin Hao looked at his soldiers under his command, especially Lu Zhuang and Lu Wu, who were comrades in the same camp. After a month of getting along, who could be ruthless if people were not plants and trees? Although Lin Hao is now a zombie, in addition to his body and blood-sucking instinct, his heart and will are still Lin Hao. So the thought of my comrades who had just met in this world, all of whom were about to die on the battlefield, made me feel somewhat overwhelmed. Sure enough, I still look up to myself. Lin Hao secretly thought to himself that he had turned into a zombie, and when he first killed and sucked blood, his face remained expressionless, indicating that he had already achieved a heart of stone. But now Lin Hao realized that he had never changed. It was just because of the zombie's instinct that he was decisive in killing. Forget it, let's take a closer look. Lin Hao secretly thought to himself and then began his military career. During these days, he would go out every few days to hunt down the scout team of the Tartars. Occasionally missing a scout team, the Tartars did not notice any abnormalities. After all, the gathering of hundreds of thousands of armies on both sides, there were too many mutual detections, and it was normal for the other party to occasionally destroy a scout team. Lin Hao transformed the entire warhorse into a zombie horse. After all, warhorses were important military supplies in ancient times. His own zombie horses have 10 times the strength of ordinary warhorses, which are rare treasures. While Lin Hao was pondering, Lu Zhuang angrily walked into the camp. "General, what do those damn supply officers say? Our new recruits don't need horses, they just need to follow the cavalry and wave flags and shout. Why do you want us to buy war horses ourselves? It's really frustrating to look down on people like this." Lu Zhuang said angrily, while Lin Hao had an ordinary expression because he had already guessed this. After arriving at the Brave Cavalry camp, he found that there were many noble sons who came to gild the camp. Obviously, those warhorses were given priority to these noble children, who started as military marquises or even colonels after joining the army. You know, that's a military marquis who leads 1,000 troops and a colonel who leads 3,000 troops. It can only be said that a group of playboys who only know how to eat, drink, and have fun will enter the army as marquises and colonels, and their soldiers under their command will inevitably face unpredictable life and death. It's okay, I can get you a batch of warhorses. Lin Hao smiled and said that although he had no intention of sacrificing his life for the court, since these brothers were under his command, he would certainly not ignore them. Lu Zhuang was taken aback for a moment, and then everyone showed joy on their faces. Because of Lin Hao's appearance, people have always firmly believed that he comes from a wealthy family, and perhaps he is also a descendant of a noble family or a tiger in the family. A few days later, in a mountain forest outside Zhenbei city, everyone was shocked to see the hundreds of war horses in front of them. Is this really ours? Although they don't understand, they can still see that these warhorses are several times better than those of the brave cavalry camp. Just being one head taller in size, and with that fierce gaze and strong tendons, it obviously doesn't look easy to provoke. In the future, these will be our warhorses, but these warhorses are different, they all feed on meat. At the end of regular training, they can be placed in the mountains and forests, and they will go hunting on their own. Listening to Lin Hao's words, everyone was shocked to see such a strange warhorse. But then they were too lazy to care about these things. After all, with such warhorses, the possibility of surviving on the battlefield is even greater, and they can even make achievements and honor their ancestors. When Lin Hao's 100-man team brought the warhorses back to the military camp, the entire brave cavalry camp was in an uproar. Hiss! Where did you get this warhorse from? Oh my goodness, he's so strong and muscular, and his gaze is too fierce, isn't it? I don't look like a warhorse, I look more like a tiger. Not to mention the ordinary cavalry of the brave cavalry camp, even those generals were shocked. Of course, such a superior warhorse would naturally attract envious people, and the next day, soldiers came to Lin Hao to issue orders. Zhao Wu Colonel Wang Chong has ordered that you add 100 war horses to Zhao Wu Colonel's account, and tomorrow we will rearrange 100 war horses for you. There was no discussion, just the tone of the order. Looking at Lu Zhuang and others who dared not speak out in anger, Lin Hao's face remained indifferent. He had long known that it would arouse people's salivation, but so what? Strike it out. Lin Hao said calmly that he was not a submissive person. When the war was about to break out, he didn't believe it. This is just a wealthy family member who came to gild themselves, and they dare to take the risk of a mutiny in the military camp to forcibly seize their horses. After all, there was no distribution of warhorses from above. He had brought these warhorses himself, and no one could justify snatching them at this moment. As expected, Lin Hao did beat up the soldier who had issued the order, but it had no impact. At least the soldat called Zhao Wu Colonel in the military camp dare not move, but of course, the subsequent small actions should continue. Sure enough, a few days later, an order was issued to allow Lin Hao's 100-man team to serve as scouts and explore the enemy's movements on the grassland. You don't have to think about it, it should be the handwriting of Colonel Zhao Wu Wang Chong. He didn't even need to show his face, so he could send them to the brink of death without bloodshed. TSK, it is indeed an ancient time of eating people without vomiting bones. But who made me a zombie? A mere battlefield wouldn't have killed me. Lin Hao was completely indifferent, but when he looked at his comrades behind him, he fell silent for a moment. He was invincible and not afraid of death, but these guys behind him probably couldn't survive. Perhaps some people would say that at that time, Lin Hao's obedience and refusal to offend Colonel Zhao Wu would have made everything okay. That is obviously impossible, because even without Wang Chong, Lu Zhuang, Lu Wu, and others would have almost died in this battle. After all, meat grinders with over 500,000 armies on both sides. A cavalry like them, who have only trained soldiers for over a month and have never ridden horses before, is not necessarily doomed to death. So even if it doesn't offend Wang Chong, Lu Zhuang and others can hardly survive. Perhaps we can give it a try. Lin Hao looked at the zombie horse under his crotch and had this idea in his heart. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Lin Hao reveals the true body of zombies and slaughter battlefield. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Lin Hao reveals the true body of zombies and slaughter battlefield on the official road outside the town of Zhenbei. 100 iron cavalry galloped past, riding tall war horses that looked incredibly powerful, but in reality, everyone's face was filled with worry and fear. Lord, do you say we can come back alive? Lu Zhuang trembled and asked in a trembling voice. As they walked out of the military camp, other colleagues looked at them with pitiful eyes, indicating that this mission was a near death. Lin Hao fell silent for a moment. After all, a major battle was imminent between the two sides. At this time, the scouts sent out to spy on each other, Jiaguan, would be defeated. It is to use the lives of these scouts to gather intelligence from the enemy, in order to enhance our own advantage. This kind of loss is not only for Zhou, but also for the Tartars. Just because the Tartars are more elite, the losses will be smaller. 9 deaths without life, only 6 of the first 200 men sent out survived and returned. Lin Hao said calmly that he had secretly gone out of the military camp these days and absorbed a lot of blood, including many soldiers who died in battle. So for the brutality of the battlefield, Lin Hao had already seen it in advance, but so many people died from mutual probing before the frontal battlefield. This ancient battlefield is truly terrifying. Of course, for Lin Hao, who is a zombie, this is clearly a good thing. After all, with more and more deaths, he will gain more blood and correspondingly stronger strength. Everyone fell silent, and in the end, Lu Zhuang let out a sigh. If I die, what will my mother do? There is still one mother left in Lu Zhuang's family, who was conscripted to join the army. Lu Wu is also similar. The official in their county town is a corrupt official, and he directly recruited strong men to complete the tasks on the field. If he didn't come, the entire village wouldn't be able to survive. Looking at everyone, Lin Hao suddenly said. Don't worry, as long as you don't want to die, I can bring you back. Lin Hao's words have 3 levels to play. After all, if they are willing to become zombies, they can indeed come back alive. But after all, they are not modern people like Lin Hao, and with more knowledge, they are not very resistant to becoming zombies. Perhaps in the minds of ancient people, zombies were demons and monsters, indicating that they would rather die than become zombies. Everyone walked forward and finally arrived at a canyon, but after arriving here, Lin Hao suddenly stopped moving forward. Wait! Lin Hao said in a deep voice. Everyone looked at Lin Hao, and at this moment, a cold light flashed in his eyes as he ambushed them. I made a mistake. If I had known how many zombie birds I should have taken, would have been able to gather intelligence from thousands of miles away in advance. Lin Hao secretly thought to himself, because he believed that exploring would encounter at most a few hundred Tartar troops. But I didn't expect them to be surrounded by thousands of Tartar armies, which is obviously unreasonable. After all, the scouts of the Tartars are at most a team of hundreds like them, with at most a few hundred iron cavalry members. But suddenly, thousands of people appeared, which would have been impossible without prior arrangements. Lin Hao's perception is within a maximum range of kilometers, and with only a few hundred cavalry, he can easily escape with the power of zombie horses. But now they have entered this canyon, and the only 2 roads ahead and behind are surrounded, clearly making it difficult for them to escape. Boom boom boom. The fierce sound of horse hooves rang out, and Lu Zhuang and others changed their faces greatly. Then they suddenly looked back and saw countless Tartars and iron cavalry rushing towards them. Tartars! How could there be so many? It's over, we're doomed. Everyone exclaimed in surprise. Everyone was sweating profusely, at least a few thousand Tartars. Faced with such a large number of Tartars, not to mention their 100 iron cavalry, even the tens of thousands of iron cavalry in Dazhou may not be able to compete. The battle was about to break out, and Lin Hao rushed out with his own strength to tear open a gap. Wherever he passed, all the Tartars were killed, and Lu Zhuang and others saw hope with his strong strength. He then closely followed Lin Hao to prepare to charge out. If it weren't for them, Lin Hao wouldn't have rushed out at this time, even if he had killed all these thousands of Tartars alone. After all, as a zombie, he grows stronger every time he sucks blood. Now that he has destroyed thousands of Tartars, all it takes is some time. But ultimately, Lu Zhuang and others were just mortal bodies. During the process of charging, they would accidentally get a knife. This was just 100 meters away, and they had already been chopped several times, and blood rushed out. 1, 2, 3 Under the siege of the army, the absolute number can indeed be overwhelming, and except for Lin Hao, soldiers began to die one by one. When Lin Hao rushed out a distance and turned his head, what he saw was Lu Zhuang who had been cut off by his waist. On the side, Lu Wu had half of his arm chopped off, and he still breathed a sigh of relief, but it was clear that he was bound to die. Let's go quickly. Lu Wu roared and shouted, Lin Hao's strength is strong. In just 100 meters of charge, he killed dozens of Tartars. Perhaps with his skills, he can charge out. Suddenly, Lin Hao stopped moving, and strangely, there was no hint of death on his face. Instead, he sighed and said, If possible, actually I don't want you to become monsters like me, neither human nor ghost. After speaking, Lin Hao looked at the grinning Tartar soldiers and then grinned. Have you ever seen hell? At the moment when Lin Hao's words fell, countless hooves sounded around him, and then zombie horses rushed out one by one. Not many in quantity, but there are thousands of them. This is what Lin Hao has collected these days, including the war horses of the Tartar scout team he killed himself, as well as the war horses lost by the Zhou scout. Will master. Lu Wu, who still had a breath, stared blankly at Lin Hao and saw him walk up to Lu Wu and say in a deep voice. Lu Wu, next you will see the real me. At the moment he finished speaking, Lin Hao's eyes turned red, as if blood was flowing through them. Then two sharp teeth popped out of his mouth, and sharp claws also grew on his arms. Roar! With a long howl from the sky, the terrifying roar of the zombies scared the Tartars' warhorses to a frenzy. Lu Wu, who had lost half of his arm, stared blankly at Lin Hao, who was roaring up in front of him. At this moment, he understood everything. Why did he make the main strength strong like a monster? It turned out that he was not a human. Kill! With Lin Hao's command, thousands of zombie horses rushed towards the Tartar soldiers. Under the impact of a powerful physique, one can directly overturn the people who were hit by the cavalry, and then wherever the hooves trample, blood spurts out continuously. Lin Hao was even more terrifying, his ghostly figure weaving through the battlefield, holding two Tartar soldiers in his hands wherever he passed, and then drinking to his heart's content. Usually, he occasionally hunts and kills a few Tartar scouts, but this time with over 3,000 Tartars, it will definitely increase Lin Hao's strength. Ah! Monster, he's a monster. Chang Shengshan, help me, help me. Don't come over, monsters don't come over. The screams of terror, despair echoed through the entire canyon, and it was like a one-sided massacre. Zombie horses block the intersections on both sides, while Lin Hao transforms into a demon god and constantly slaughters Tartar soldiers on the battlefield, drinking their blood. Endless blood was devoured, and Lin Hao's breath became increasingly powerful. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Transform 72 zombies and return to military camp to kill people. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 transforms 72 zombies and returned to military camp to kill people. When he devoured a certain amount, Lin Hao felt a shock all over him, as if he had evolved to a new level. Roar! I saw Lin Hao howling up to the sky, and then all the Tartar soldiers around him screamed out in agony, with countless blood gushing out of their pupils and pores. Finally, they turned into red streams that slowly converged into Lin Hao's mouth. The crimson blood emitted a strange light under the moonlight, and Lu Wu, who had half of his arm cut off, stared blankly at it all. For a long time, Lin Hao stopped eating and slowly opened his eyes. The crimson and seductive pupils made Lu Wu feel his soul tremble. Indeed, the battlefield is the most suitable place for me. With a smile on his face, Lin Hao devoured 3,000 elite Tartar soldiers. His strength was several times stronger than before, and even his devouring efficiency had increased. At the same time, Lin Hao gained a new ability, which is flying. Nowadays, Lin Hao can fly with the help of corpse gas, and this discovery excites him immensely because he is really growing stronger at a speed visible to the naked eye. All the zombie horses around were kneeling on the ground with their front hooves bent, as if welcoming their king. Lin Hao landed and slowly walked up to Lu Wu. To his surprise, Lu Wu was not afraid. Squatting down, Lin Hao said to Lu Wu. Lu Wu, do you want to live? Live with your brothers. Listening to Lin Hao's words, Lu Wu was taken aback for a moment, and then seemed to understand something. Yes. I want to live. I don't want to die, I want to stand out, I want my family to have a good life. Lu Wu hardly hesitated at all. They have been living in hell all along, and now they have the opportunity to survive and achieve great power. Who wouldn't want this? So, swallow him. Lin Hao forced a drop of blood essence from his fingertips and then handed it to Lu Wu. This is my zombie essence and blood. Consuming this essence and blood can transform into a zombie. You will be invincible and have endless strength. But on the other hand, you will feed on fresh blood, and my life and death will be under my control. Listening to Lin Hao's words, Lu Wu did not waver at all. What about becoming a monster instead of living like this and letting people control life and death? Lin Hao was a bit surprised. It seemed that although Lu Wu had no culture, he was not a foolish person. Lu Wu should also have realized that they were being calculated. After all, it was clearly an ambush set up in advance. How could this be possible without someone calculating? After all, they are just a scout team of 100 people. How could they be surrounded by so many Tartars? In the end, Lu Wu devoured Lin Hao's essence and blood. In an instant, Lu Wu's face was grim, and the crimson blood directly enveloped him. Then the cut off half of the arm began to wriggle and finally recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Lin Hao looked at Lu Wu, who was constantly roaring and had fangs growing, and then reached out to suck out a small amount of blood from the body of the Tartar soldiers. With a flick of his finger, he threw it all into Lu Wu's mouth. Lu Wu greedily swallowed it all, and then his fierce face gradually recovered. Master. Lu Wu knelt on one knee and respectfully said, like a zombie horse, Lin Hao controls Lu Wu's life, death, and will. Perhaps due to Lin Hao's personal evolution, Lu Wu and his transformed zombies can freely control their appearance. Finally, Lin Hao used the same method to transform all the brothers who died in battle into zombies. Lin Hao found that the brothers whose heads were shattered or beheaded could not be resurrected and transformed into zombies, which brought a bit of gloom to his heart. He is a person who protects his subordinates. Although he has only been under his command for a short time, at least he called himself a general, so Lin Hao held a grudge against the Zhaowu Colonel Wang Chong. Seat Master. In the end, there were only 72 people left in a team of 102 people. 72 of them have all been transformed into zombies, and their strength is now 10 times stronger than when they were still ordinary people. Whether it's physique, strength, speed, etc., they are all 10 times higher than before. Coupled with their impenetrable skin, their combat power is unimaginable. If they encounter 3,000 Tartar cavalry again, they can slaughter 76 zombies completely. At the same time, Lin Hao also felt that he had reached his limit now, and as he had guessed before, the quality of blood required to convert human zombies was too high. 10 war horses do not have as much essence and blood as a human zombie needs, so Lin Hao is approaching his limit at this time, but so many zombie soldiers are already strong enough. Cut off all the heads and we'll go back for revenge. Lin Hao said coldly, and a cold light flickered in everyone's eyes. Although they had been resurrected by the Lord, they had already died once, and even Lu Zhuang was cut off by his waist. Therefore, there is no place to vent the anger in my heart, so I naturally want to kill the culprit. Otherwise, how can I justify myself who has died once? At present, everyone beheaded all 3,000 Tartar soldiers, but Lin Hao did not completely absorb the blood from the body and turn it into a dry corpse, otherwise it would be seen that something was wrong. When beheading, destroy the fangs and holes that you had previously created, thoroughly clean them up, and no one would have thought there were zombies in this world. Finally, everyone made some simple wooden carts and placed the bodies of the brothers who had lost their heads, as well as the heads of the Tartar soldiers, on top of them. They walked towards the direction of Jinbei city with a heavy expression on their faces. Although they have become zombies, in addition to feeding on blood, they still have the same memories and personalities as before. Previously, we were brothers who boasted and farted together, but now we have all turned into headless corpses. Everyone is holding a wave of anger in their hearts, and when they return to the brave cavalry camp, it will definitely explode. In the military camp of Junbei City, there were soldiers guarding from afar who discovered something. A scout team has returned. A soldier exclaimed, "It's just that he didn't come back like this." The reason he exclaimed was because he saw the head as high as a small mountain. Some soldiers who have not experienced the battlefield even turned pale and vomited in fear. The entire military camp was a sensation, and Lin Hao's 100-man team has returned. And also carrying the heads of thousands of Tartars. Everyone turned into zombies, with a sense of oppression and a bloody smell that made the soldiers around tremble. "Where is Colonel Xiaowu?" Qin Hao directly asked a soldier, who was so scared that his legs trembled. He quickly pointed in a direction and said, "The main account of the Chinese army." Lin Hao walked forward without hesitation, and many soldiers gave way wherever he passed, even some military lords were too scared to move. 72 zombie soldiers followed behind, and the cart where thousands of Tartars' heads were located creaked, causing everyone's hearts to beat with the shaking of their heads. "I'm afraid something big is going to happen." A veteran trembled and said, "These guys have returned with a great victory, and they have also come back to kill." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Is it enough to kill Wang Chong with 3,000 bandit heads in the main tent? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Is it enough to kill Wang Chong with 3,000 bandit heads in the main tent? At the same time, within the main account, Marshal Niu Jizong of Peking University is discussing with the generals. Those who can enter this main account to discuss strategies must at least hold the position of colonel. Colonel is already a 6th-rank military officer, belonging to the position of middle and upper-level generals in the Zhou army. The Xiaowu Colonel Wang Chong is among them, ranking at the bottom. It seems that he has no right to speak here, and even a colonel like him can only stand. Wow! At this moment, the large tent was lifted, and Niu Jizong frowned and looked over, only to see a figure covered in blood slowly walking into the tent. "Who are you? How dare you trespass on the main account?" Niu Jizong scolded, but wondered why the soldier at the door didn't stop him. Little did he know that the soldier was frightened by Lin Hao's powerful momentum and his legs were weak. Lin Hao became increasingly unhappy as he thought about it, because he didn't know before that beheading couldn't resurrect him as a zombie, and all the zombie horses that were mainly converted were living horses. As a result, some brothers are still gone forever, so there is a surge of anger in their hearts. "Who is Wang Chong?" Lin Hao asked in a deep voice, and subconsciously, many generals locked their eyes on a standing colonel. The appearance of a thief's eyebrows and mouse eyes doesn't seem like a general, but more like a street-side green skin. "Die!" Lin Hao, who didn't speak much harshly, let out a roar, then took a step out and disappeared in place like a teleportation. The next second, he appeared in front of Xiaowu Colonel Wang Chong. "Bold!" Niu Jizong scolded, although upon closer inspection, he was also intimidated by Lin Hao's powerful murderous aura, but in the end, as a marshal, he still had some courage. Lin Hao is a zombie. Now it can be called a zombie king, and just now he personally killed 3,000 Tartar cavalry, drained their blood. The bloody smell and murderous aura on his body are truly terrifying. "You! What are you doing?" Xiaowu Colonel Wang Chong was so frightened that his liver and gallbladder were about to crack, and he fell directly onto the ground, then defecated and urinated. "My name is Lin Hao." Listening to Lin Hao's words, Wang Chong was first stunned, and then became horrified. He knew nothing about what he had done himself. In order to retaliate against Lin Hao for injuring his own guards and not giving up his excellent warhorses, he used the power of the Wang family to arrange a dangerous mission for Lin Hao. Later, he still couldn't calm down and contacted the generals in the Tartar army through the channels of the Wang family caravan, selling the news to them. For the Tartar generals, beheading 100 people was also a considerable credit, not to mention that Wang Chong sent some exquisite porcelain and silk. Perhaps these things can already buy several excellent war horses, but Wang Chong and his playboy like him value revenge. Especially during the investigation, it was also found that Lin Hao was just a mud-legged person, and if he dared to offend him, it would be a way to take death. But Wang Chong never expected that Lin Hao would dare to come knocking on his door, and it was still in front of the entire senior officers in the northern region. "You, dare you touch me? I am a 6th-rank Xiaowu colonel from the court." Wang Chong shouted loudly, as if this identity and these senior generals in the camp could give him confidence. But he underestimated Lin Hao's courage. As a zombie, Lin Hao has nothing to fear. To put it bluntly, he can easily leave. With his abilities, there is no place in the world where he cannot go. Even if Lin Hao is willing, he can stay in the palace for a few days without anyone noticing. Ignoring Wang Chong's threat, Lin Hao grabbed his neck directly and then forcefully crushed it. With a click, a crisp sound of bone fracture sounded, and the generals in the room stared blankly. They didn't expect anyone to be so bold. "Dare, who the hell are you?" Niu Jizong was really angry. Although Wang Chong was a waste, at least he was also appointed by the court as a 6th-rank Xiaowu colonel. Such a blatant killing would make him the old face of this marshal. Lin Hao looked at Niu Jizong, and many colonels, generals, and others in the area where his gaze passed dared not look at him. Obviously, Lin Hao's arbitrary act of pinching Wang Chong has truly intimidated many people. Report to Marshal, bid for the 100 generals of the brave cavalry camp. This seduction coveted the horses under the command of the target, but the intention was unsuccessful. They secretly contacted the Tartar generals to arrange for 3,000 soldiers and horses to surround and kill us. May I ask Marshal, why is it not appropriate to kill him for such collusion with the enemy? Listening to Lin Hao's words, the whole room fell silent. Some of the participating generals looked even paler, indicating that they were the ones who gave face to the Wang family and asked Lin Hao to carry out dangerous missions. I never expected that Wang Chong would be so foolish. He dared to contact the Tartars during the critical period of the war, which could easily lead to their downfall. How shrewd is Niu Jizong? Just scanning around reveals that many people's faces are not looking right, indicating a great possibility of this. Humph. Of course he didn't hesitate to die, but as a subordinate, you publicly killed the court's military officials. Such a crime should be considered as plagiarism and extermination of the family. Niu Jizong's words are indeed true. No matter in what era, committing rebellion is a heinous crime. But Lin Hao was not afraid at all. He suddenly tore open the curtain of the big tent and then said in a deep voice, "Can you buy this head of a dog thief for these 3,000 Tartars?" The deafening sound echoed through half of the military camp, and Niu Jizong and others stood up in shock. Previously, Lin Hao said that when they were surrounded, Niu Jizong and others had the ability to break through the encirclement. But to my surprise, this was not breaking through the encirclement at all, but completely annihilating it. Is this really a Tartar's head? A general said in a daze, a person's head like a small mountain cannot be fake. After all, the faces of the Tartars are different from those of the Central Plains and have a foreign style. After being stunned, Niu Jizong's heart shook. He knew that Lin Hao was threatening and interpreting a fact. Leading 100 cavalry and killing thousands of Tartars, what a remarkable achievement is this. Even if the ancient Xiongnu came, it was impossible to achieve it, right? And all of this was achieved by Lin Hao. Just this achievement alone, Lin Hao can be revered as the god of war by the thousands of soldiers and horses of Dezhou. If the court knew about this battle result, not only would they not punish Lin Hao, but they would even give him generous rewards. Because both the 3,000 beheadings and the dazzling battle-loss ratio are worth making the whole country rejoice and adding tens of thousands of morale to the upcoming war. Helplessly shaking his head, Niu Jizong said with an envious expression. Zhao Wu Colonel Wang Chong colluded with the enemy and betrayed the country, and was executed at the commander's camp. Listening to Niu Jizong's words, everyone was sweating profusely. As expected, he was truly the commander-in-chief. The Wang family and one of the 4 Wangs and 8 Gongs, the Jia family, were related by marriage, so they naturally became close to the 4 Wangs and 8 Gongs. But Niu Jizong said that if he gave up, he would give up, and even put the blame on him directly, all just to appease Lin Hao, this peerless warrior. But in everyone's opinion, this is worth it. How can a playboy who comes to guild compare to a fierce general who kills 3,000 Tartar cavalry with 100 cavalry? Not to mention being a Wang Chong, even some generals suspect that Lin Hao's position in the hearts of Niu Jizong is even higher than theirs. Niu Jizong looked at Lin Hao and continued speaking. I will present your achievements at the meeting, and you will temporarily lead the Black Feathers' 3,000 troops. Everyone was amazed by the coolness of tea leaves, and the Black Feather Division was a cavalry unit previously controlled by Wang Chong in the Brave Cavalry camp. The Brave Cavalry Battalion has 10 cavalry units, each under the command of 10 colonels. Lin Hao, who rose from being 100 men to becoming a colonel, can be said to have achieved great success. However, considering his achievements, everyone thinks that this colonel is still low. Only when the holy capital city knows about this battle result, Lin Hao will definitely be able to continue to rise. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Soaring to fame in one step, officially conferred the title of General Xuanwei. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Soaring to fame in one step, officially conferred the title of General Xuanwei a few days later, as the northern border was not far from here, the messenger soldiers quickly arrived at the capital city. Great Northern Victory, Great Northern Victory. The entire Xinjing city caused a sensation, and everyone suspected that their ears might have heard it wrong. The Northern Victory. If I remember correctly, De Zhou has not achieved any victories in the border area for over 20 years. At the same time, in the palace, the current emperor, Emperor Jiaguan, was handling government affairs in his study. Alas, the consequences of the war in the northern region are unpredictable, and the salt tax in Jiangnan has been unresolved for a long time. Even the food and salaries of the soldiers in the northern region have become a problem. Emperor Jiaguan was quite headache-ridden. The Supreme Emperor had gone to the Dragon Head Palace to be carefree, but he had left himself with a mess. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! And at this moment, eunuch Dai Quan ran in excitedly. Emperor Jiaguan looked curiously at Dai Quan. Dai Quan was the person who was hiding in his mansion and was usually very calm. What big event had happened to him in such a panic? Why are you so panicked? Emperor Jiaguan asked Dai Quan. Your Majesty is delighted. Great victory in the northern region, beheading 3,000 Tartars. Dai Quan, the old eunuch, blushed with excitement because he knew how worried the court had been about the war in the northern region recently. What? Emperor Jiaguan stood up excitedly, his hand hidden under his sleeve trembling slightly. However, the emperor's identity suppressed his excitement. Bring it up quickly. Emperor Jiaguan shouted loudly, and Dai Quan quickly handed over the good news report. When he saw the content, Emperor Jiaguan was stunned because it was too unbelievable. 100-person team encountered 3,000 Tartar cavalry, but at the cost of only a few dozen people, they completely annihilated 3,000 Tartar cavalry. To be honest, no one can believe this battle report. Not to mention 3,000 Tartars, even a battle loss ratio of 300 Tartars is unimaginable. Your Majesty, the embroidery guards have investigated and confirmed the heads of the 3,000 Tartars. Moreover, the news from the Tartars' side has made them quite angry about the losses of these 3,000 cavalry. Dai Quan said so. Upon hearing that the embroidery guards had confirmed the outcome of the battle, Emperor Jiaguan no longer doubted it, and then became excited. Okay. Such a big victory can greatly boost morale before the start of the war and have a significant impact on the entire situation. Looking at the excited Emperor Jiaguan, Dai Quan hesitated for a moment and said, "Your Majesty, there is actually one more thing." Later, Dai Quan talked about Lin Hao's killing of Wang Chong, but as expected, Emperor Jiaguan was not angry. After all, for Emperor Jiaguan, how can a mere colonel be compared to a fierce general who can fight well? "Who is Wang Chong?" Emperor Jiaguan asked, "How dare you collude with the Tartars? This courage is really amazing. I would like to inform your Majesty that Wang Chong is Mr. Wang's nephew." Listening to Dai Quan's words, a cold light flashed in Emperor Jiaguan's eyes. Is Wang Zidong? Sure enough, these nobles are really bold. The nephew of a military governor in the capital actually dares to collude with the Tartars to harm the soldiers of the Zhou dynasty. What else are they afraid to do? But Emperor Jiaguan also knew that he could not take action against Prince Teng, at least not for now. After all, this great war still relies on these honors. Xian Baiguan goes to court. Emperor Jiaguan said directly. In the subsequent court session, Lin Hao's achievements shook the entire court, and the officials naturally did not believe it. However, when they learned that this matter was confirmed by the embroidery guards, they fell silent. After all, that was the embroidered clothes guard. The presence that made the court officials tremble at the news was not as impressive as before, but their intelligence skills were still there. Emperor Jiaguan, who was extremely excited, was about to give Lin Hao a special title, and there were no trusted generals in his army. Lin Hao's appearance made his heart boil. So in the end, Emperor Jiaguan ruled out the crowd and directly appointed Lin Hao as the general of Xuanwei, leading a cavalry camp of 30,000 iron cavalry. General Xuanwei belongs to the rank of Grand 4 rank general and can lead a battalion of 30,000 troops. It can be said that Lin Hao has truly achieved great success. As for the title, it was not granted because Emperor Jiaguan wanted to win over Lin Hao and gain military power, so he placed all the titles on military positions. Otherwise, Lin Hao could not have become the commander of the brave cavalry camp in one fell swoop. However, it is already enough. From a 9th rank general to a 4th rank general of Xuanwei, there has never been such a promotion throughout history. After the downfall of the dynasty, people from all sides began to inquire about Lin Hao. After all, Lin Hao's military achievements were too incredible. Everyone knew that if such a person did not die, they would inevitably become a brilliant star in the Zhou army, and even a person who carried the cauldron. The only unhappy one is the Wang family. Because of Wang Chong's situation, Lin Hao naturally does not deal with the Wang family, so the rise of such new stars naturally makes the Wang family quite wary. At such a critical moment, even Wang Zidong dared not continue to take action against Lin Hao, as Wang Chong's incident had already led His Majesty to warn the Wang family. Even the emperor is quite dissatisfied. After all, it is good for the emperor to compete with His Majesty for imperial power, but the premise is that the world is still under their royal control. Wang Chong's actions are already endangering the country, so even if Wang Zidong is a member of the Supreme Emperor, he was still warned. At the same time, in the Ronghua prefecture, after Jia Zheng went to court, he also talked to Jia's mother about this matter. The 4 major families are united. It seems that this General Xuanwei will not be able to deal with our 4 major families in the future. Jia Mu sighed and said, after all, no matter how you look at Lin Hao's posture, he has a rising appearance. Now that he has an official position, what Lin Hao lacks at this time is only a title. If he continues to make military achievements, this title will definitely not be able to run away. However, both the Jia and Wang families did not take this matter to heart, just because everyone did not believe that Lin Hao could really survive this battle. Good performance is not a good thing either. Lin Hao's powerful strength will inevitably be highly valued by Niu Jizong, and he will often do some dangerous tasks or use them on the front battlefield. After all, the brave cavalry battalion is one of the few cavalry units in Dezhou. In this situation, every time he goes to battle, he is 9 dead and has no life. There is a great possibility that Lin Hao will not come back alive in such a situation. Northern Territory. Since becoming the main commander of the brave cavalry camp, Lin Hao has had much fewer restrictions in his daily life. The Xiaoqi camp was the only established cavalry camp in Dazhou. 30,000 cavalry soldiers can be said to be the foundation of Dazhou's family. Even Niu Jizong could not interfere with the Xiaoqi camp in his daily life, so Lin Hao's days were very leisurely. Occasionally, he would take zombie soldiers out to hunt in the autumn wind, but no one would stop him. Of course, the brave cavalry camp is no longer as powerful as it was during the founding period. After all, there are too many gilded noble children, but this has nothing to do with Lin Hao, because his ultimate goal is to become stronger through bloodsucking on the battlefield. But one day when he walked out of the camp, Lin Hao froze. "What are you doing here?" Lin Hao looked at the enthusiastic training in front of him and asked Lu Zhuang and Lu Wu in confusion. "General, we are training the soldiers of the brave cavalry battalion." "Your soldiers are so weak, it's embarrassing, General." "So Lu Wu and I are thinking about training them, striving to make them stronger as soon as possible and serve you, General," Lu Zhuang said in a muffled voice. Lin Hao's head was full of question marks. He didn't have this idea. But looking at the passionate appearance of Lu Zhuang, Lu Wu, and the other 70 zombies under his command, Lin Hao couldn't bear to dampen their enthusiasm. "Forget it, you can handle it yourself." Lin Hao waved his hand helplessly, as he didn't need to train himself. They could do whatever they liked. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. The Great War begins, Jiaguan slaughtered by the Tartars. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The Great War begins, Jiaguan slaughtered by the Tartars. As the main general of the brave cavalry camp, Lin Hao is idle every day. But Lu Zhuang and Lu Wu were extremely busy. There are zombie horses out hunting, and the food in the brave cavalry camp is simply exploding. The delicacies of the mountains and seas, as well as the dead warhorses captured by hunting Tartar scouts, are all sourced from meat. After having sufficient meat, the difficulty of this training can naturally increase accordingly. Under such training, the changes in the brave cavalry camp can be said to be visible to the naked eye. It is worth mentioning that there is no need for Lin Hao to personally take action, as all the noble children who came to guild in the brave cavalry camp have left on their own. The reason is quite simple. With Lin Hao becoming the main commander of the brave cavalry battalion and his outstanding achievements, he will inevitably become a sharp sword in the hands of Niu Jizong. Whether it's attacking the city or gnawing on the hard bones of the Tartars, it will make Niu Jizong think of Lin Hao's brave cavalry camp for the first time. In this case, the brave cavalry camp is no longer a safe place, so these noble children will naturally want to slip away at the first time. Of course, Niu Jizong was pleased to see this happen, as if these guys stayed in the brave cavalry camp, it would greatly affect the combat effectiveness of the brave cavalry camp. Therefore, Niu Jizong directly handed over the entire brave cavalry battalion to Lin Hao, and even asked him to appoint colonels, and so on. Lin Hao was also not polite at all, directly appointing 3 generals, namely Lu Wu, Lu Zhuang, and a military marquis named Chinda. Then he entrusted all the matters of the brave cavalry camp to them, but ultimately couldn't resist the requests of Lu Zhuang and Lu Wu, so Lin Hao would still do some things. For example, when it comes to zombie horses, Lin Hao switched to more zombie horses at the request of Lu Wu and Lu Zhuang. As his strength continued to increase, the number of zombie horses also skyrocketed. After all, compared to human zombies, this animal zombie requires much lower purity of semen and blood. Initially, Lin Hao had over 1,000 zombie horses, but now that he has grown to be in charge of the brave cavalry camp, his zombie horses can easily surpass 3,000. Lin Hao concentrated these 3,000 zombie horses on the most elite cavalry, and the Black Feather Division, led by 70 zombie soldiers, directly obtained these 3,000 zombie horses. Zombie horses are extremely terrifying, not to mention facing ordinary warhorses, their ferocity can even fight tigers. So with his strong physique and strength, Lin Hao directly arranged heavy armor for the zombie horse. De Zhou was poor, but in the current situation, as long as he wanted to satisfy the war, even those who smashed pots and sold iron had to come together. So after witnessing the powerful strength of the Black Feather Department, Niu Jizong bravely brought heavy armor to Lin Hao. It is said to be the armor left by the Iron Butcher of the previous dynasty. Niu Jizong found someone to renovate and improve it, turning it into black armor. The whole body was covered in a package, only the eyes were exposed. Even the warhorses are wrapped in iron armor, making their defense unparalleled. However, this weight also makes the cavalry unbearable. But only the Black Feather is special, because of the strength of the zombie horse. This incredibly heavy armor is as light as a feather on the zombie horse's body. As for Lin Hao's request for a ghost face to cover his face, it is for the sake of zombies. Although the body of zombies is also powerful, in fact, the most powerful time for zombies is when they reveal their true form. So Lin Hao requested armor to cover his entire body, including his face, naturally in order for zombie soldiers to use real combat during battles. After finally achieving results in training at the brave cavalry camp, the war began. 200,000 iron cavalry soldiers of the Tartars descended upon the city, and the vast number of people and horses brought a great sense of oppression to the entire northern region. In previous years, when the Tartars came to strike the autumn wind, they would usually have around tens of thousands of troops and horses, usually rushing into the northern border to plunder some food and supplies before leaving. But this time, with a direct uprising of 200,000, there is a feeling of taking over the entire northern territory. In the military camp, Niu Jizong sat at the top, while Lin Hao, the commander of the brave cavalry battalion, also sat on one side. Nowadays, within this military camp, Lin Hao's status has greatly improved. Apart from a few generals, it is Lin Hao, the commander of the brave cavalry camp, who holds the highest position. After all, 30,000 in the army is a battalion, and 100,000 is a town. Except for the general of one town, no other general at the battalion level holds a higher position than Lin Hao. After all, Lin Hao is the commander of the cavalry battalion, the brave cavalry battalion, equivalent to the special forces of later generations. Ladies and gentlemen, the Tartars have come with great force this time, and even made sufficient preparations in the early stage. Their goal may be to take over the entire Liaodong north border. Niu Jizong said in a deep voice that it was precisely because the Great Zhou had declined a lot in recent years, especially due to the double-day suspension, which has led to chaos in the Great Zhou. In recent years, the Tartars have gained a lot of benefits from the Zhou dynasty, and even occupied some border cities. It is normal to focus their entire goal on Liaodong now. These Tartars are not afraid of losing their teeth. The last general's request for war, we and more than 300,000 soldiers, would we still be afraid that they won't succeed? The general said so, but upon closer inspection, their eyes were somewhat evasive. At this moment, they were only talking about the situation, and in fact, they may not dare to take the initiative to attack. Niu Jizong didn't care either. In the face of this war, as long as he defended himself, it would be a great achievement. He never considered taking the initiative to attack. At present, it is directly ordered that all troops and horses guard the city where they are located, and then Lin Hao's brave cavalry battalion serves as a mobile unit, specifically providing support in attacking the Tartar reinforcements, and so on. It can be said that Lin Hao's brave cavalry battalion became the only team that needed to go out of the city to fight, which was also the greatest effect of de Zhou on the cavalry. As for confronting the Tartars head-on, it is impossible. After all, the Tartars have 200,000 cavalry. Even if they have many infantry, how can they compete with the cavalry? This is the current idea of the soldiers of the Zhou dynasty, but Lin Hao was completely indifferent to it, because he had obtained the right to participate in the battle alone, which was actually in line with Lin Hao's idea. After all, if he fought alone, he could drink blood freely. After arriving at the northern frontier battlefield, he never lacked blood and his strength improved quickly. Lin Hao was also addicted to this feeling. Jiaguan is now like a hell. An hour ago, the Tartars sent 30,000 troops and horses to attack Jiaguan, intending to capture Jiaguan and then indirectly threaten Zhenbei city. So, upon receiving the order from Niu Jizong, Lin Hao rushed directly to Jiaguan with his 30,000-strong cavalry battalion to support Jiaguan as quickly as possible. When Lin Hao and others arrived, Jiaguan had already been breached. Da-da-da. The sound of horse hooves echoed through the streets of Jiaguan, one of the magnificent northern passes that is now in ruins, with dilapidated houses and corpses everywhere. Lin Hao's face was unprecedentedly heavy. Previously, he had been slaughtering the Tartars on one side, but now that he saw Jiaguan, which had been slaughtered by the Tartars, Lin Hao realized how cruel and ruthless the Tartars were. General, the entire Jiaguan pass has not been returned for a lifetime. The old man was killed on the spot, and the woman was tortured and played with to death. Lu Wu paused for a moment, then pointed to a pot of meat and said. The child was chopped and cooked alive, and now it's right in front of everyone's eyes. Listening to Lu Wu's words, many soldiers in the brave cavalry camp turned pale. Of course, they were disgusted, but their eyes were flickering with flames. Lin Hao took a deep breath. He had intended to stay out of the situation, but when he saw such a scene with his own eyes, he still felt a surge of fire in his heart. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Annihilation of 30,000 cavalry soldiers of the Tartars, with heavy losses. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Annihilation of 30,000 cavalry soldiers of the Tartars, with heavy losses. Lin Hao sniffed at the air, and now known as the zombie king of his generation, his abilities were more than dozens of times stronger than when he first arrived in the northern region. So it was easy to lock onto the direction of the Tartars, Lin Hao sneered. All soldiers, let's hunt freely. Listening to Lin Hao's words, 70.2 zombie soldiers all had a red light in their eyes, their thirst for blood combined with their anger towards the Tartars. At this moment, they all gathered together, and the next was bound to be a massacre. As for ordinary soldiers, they are simply angry, but that's enough. With Lin Hao and 70.2 zombies around, war will definitely not be a problem. Drive. Lin Hao let out a loud shout and then charged in one direction with 30,000 iron cavalry. At the same time, 10 miles outside Jiaguan city, 30,000 Tartar cavalry were circling towards the direction of Zhenbei city. Their task is to break through all the passes after Jiaguan, opening up a passage for the subsequent army to encircle Zhenbei city. The battle line of the Great Zhou was too long, and the Tartars were preparing to use the mobility of their cavalry to quickly erode the garrison horses of the major passes of the Great Zhou. In fact, as long as the garrison troops and horses awesome, they can stick to the arrival of reinforcements. But what can't stand is that Zhou's soldiers and horses are too useless. At present, except for the cavalry camp in Lin Hao's hands, other troops and horses have little combat power. Report. General, there are cavalry approaching from the rear, with a quantity of approximately 30,000. Listening to the messenger's words, the commander of the Tartar army was immediately impressed. If he remembered correctly, out of the more than 100,000 troops on Wednesday, there were only over 30,000 cavalry, right? It should be the one chasing them from the rear. If we take down these 30,000 cavalry, the Zhou will lose the only troop that can quickly support various battlefields. In this case, the entire northern region will eventually be slowly encroached upon by their Tartars. Set up your position, General. I will make great contributions today. The Tartar generals laughed heartily, and the surrounding Tartar soldiers did not take the enemy behind them seriously. Obviously, in their eyes, the soldiers and horses of the Zhou dynasty were all weak and weak. Although the number of people on both sides is equal, they do not believe that the Zhou army can defeat the elite of the Tartars such as themselves. Boom boom boom. The roar of the war horses came, and then the Tartar generals saw the fierce cavalry camp rushing towards them from afar. Gradually, their faces began to feel heavy, just because this brave cavalry camp exceeded their imagination. Firstly, in the face of their 30,000 heroic Tatar elite cavalry, there was no fear at all. Next is the tall warhorses, with shiny armor that looks difficult to provoke. When did the cavalry of Dezhou become so elite? At this moment, Lin Hao also saw 30,000 Tartar cavalry in the distance, with a cold light in his eyes and a bloodthirsty light flashing in his pupils. Kill! With a loud shout, without any nonsense or verbosity, Lin Hao rushed straight into the army of 30,000 Tartars. A brave general will drive the entire cavalry unit. Although the brave cavalry battalion has declined, although it has improved after this period of training, it is still far behind the Tartars. But after being activated by Lin Hao, the blood in his heart was also quite fierce and fearless of death. Boom! With a loud bang, more than 10 Tartar soldiers charging towards them, along with their horses, were directly thrown away by the spear in Lin Hao's hand. The terrifying scene intimidated everyone, and the soldiers of the brave cavalry battalion behind them were even more eye-catching, who were their main generals. And the generals of the Tartars were horrified, as one charge lifted more than 10 iron cavalry flying. This looks like a dream no matter how it looks. Who is this person? The Tartar general asked in a low voice, and a nearby warrior carefully observed before finally speaking in a low voice. General Qi, it should be Lin Hao, the commander of the brave cavalry battalion, who led 100 iron cavalry to defeat the elite of our Tartars' 3,000 scouts. It has to be said that the Tartars are not as arrogant as they imagined. In fact, they have a very accurate grasp of the intelligence of Zhou. Obviously, the Tartars are really concerned about this war. Surprisingly, it's him. The eyes of the Tartar generals were solemn for a moment. Although it was widely believed that Lin Hao had used some kind of conspiracy and trickery at the time, his incredible record of defeating 3,000 Tartar cavalry with 100 men still shook people's hearts. Therefore, this Tartar general did not underestimate Lin Hao. At least the bravery and fighting power displayed by Lin Hao at this time is worth paying attention to. Jump on all of them! The Tartar generals shouted loudly, if we can kill Lin Hao and defeat the brave cavalry camp here, it will definitely be one of the top achievements of this battle. But this Tartar general has not yet realized how terrifying Lin Hao is. He is the zombie king. Roar! Lin Hao let out a roar, which sounded like a beast's roar, causing all the Tartar soldiers to tremble in their hearts. On the contrary, the brave cavalry soldiers who killed the enemy did not pay attention to this, but only looked at Lin Hao fighting ahead with fiery eyes. Lin Hao locked in the direction of the Tartar generals. He and 70.2 zombie soldiers were powerful, but the longer the battle dragged on, the more soldiers under his command died. So Lin Hao wanted to first kill these Tartar generals, so all the Tartar soldiers would be at the end of the line. Boom! The zombie horse roared under its crotch, then erupted into terrifying speed, even stepping out of a small circular pit on the ground. Not good. The Tartar general exclaimed in surprise, but Lin Hao's speed was too fast. This is a zombie horse 10 times larger than an ordinary warhorse. Its explosive speed was as fast as lightning, so it only rushed closer in the blink of an eye. Stop him! The generals of the Tartars were torn apart by their liver and gallbladder, and they never expected that Lin Hao would be so brave, daring to charge down thousands of troops with his own strength. But how could these so-called elite Tartars be able to stop Lin Hao, waving a heavy spear in his hand without stopping? All the Tartar soldiers were directly smashed or lazily cut off wherever the light and shadow passed. In the blink of an eye, Lin Hao arrived in front of the Tartar general. In his frightened eyes, Lin Hao's claws popped out and locked his neck. Roar! Lin Hao let out a loud roar, and sharp fangs instantly emerged from his mouth. Then, they crushed the neck of the Tartar general in front of him, and waves of blood floated into Lin Hao's mouth. Subsequently, Lin Hao was like a fierce tiger emerging from its cage, constantly fighting among the thousands of soldiers, with corpses scattered everywhere he passed. This battle lasted for over an hour, and when the last Tartar was beheaded, there were not many people left to stand on the entire battlefield. If you look closely, except for 70.2 zombie soldiers and Lin Hao, who is the zombie king, the remaining surviving soldiers are either dead or disabled. In fact, this is normal. Although most of the enemy forces were killed by Lin Hao and 70.2 zombies, it is an undeniable fact that De Zhou has been weaker than the Tartars for a long time. In just over 10 days of training, it is impossible to completely transform the brave cavalry camp, so the brave cavalry camp suffered heavy losses in this battle. But for them, death may be another rebirth. End of this chapter.